So I started here at Ohio University 5 years ago now, and I joined Student Senate originally as a sophomore, I believe. So I've been on Senate for 4 years total. Feels longer than that. And I originally joined on the Senate Appropriations Commission, which is the group that I have stayed with the entire time. So I started as a senator, just like basic level in the Senate Appropriations Commission. The year after that, that same year I actually became the Financial Affairs Committee chair, the FAC chair. And then after that, I became vice commissioner, and now I am the Campus Outreach Committee chair, as well as I'm currently the graduate college senator this year as well. I originally found out about Student Senate from a friend of mine, Charlotte Klimovich. She was presenting to a group of organizations about SAC funding, and it was the first time that I had ever heard about this. And at the time I was really interested in finance and economics, and so I was curious about how this structure worked, and I was interested in how I can benefit the student body. So I reached out to her and I said, can I get involved? And she was like, yeah, talk to Lorne, who was commissioner at the time, and I met with him, and he was like, yes, we need you. So that's how I got involved, and it was just something that I was always really interested in, and then once I was sucked in, I could never leave. I learned a lot of it on the spot, mostly because SAC was a very small organization at the time. I think the first few meetings I went to, there were maybe 5 of us. Maybe, depending on the meeting reviewing applications. So a lot of it I learned on the spot, but I think part of it was that I had just background in, like, I had started learning economics in high school. I was the treasurer of 3 different student organizations, but that, so I had experience, but not $500,000 worth of funding experience. So it was definitely learning as you went. It's mostly contained in SAC because SAC is structured so differently. So a little bit of background about SAC. In, I think it was the 70s, at some point Senate dissolved. Student Senate was like, bye, we don't want to do this anymore. They dissolved themselves. And at the time, SAC stayed. You still had to give student organizations funding, and so it became its own external organization. And when Senate reformed, SAC rejoined it, but in that time it had started developing differently. So it was a bigger commission, it had different rules and procedures, it was just structured differently. So SAC is very different from the rest of the commissions and the rest of Senate. So for me, when I joined SAC, like I said, there were 5 members that would attend meetings. And that was one of the reasons why I rose through the ranks so quickly, was because we needed people to be engaged and to be there, frankly, just physically there and caring about this organization. So when Charlotte was commissioner and I was vice commissioner, that was 3 years ago, and that was the first time we moved to digital applications. It's the 21st century, and we are still using paper applications, and so we developed the first online application. We created everything digitally. We began training all student organizations, making mandatory trainings, and essentially our whole goal was to just make people more knowledgeable about SAC and actually being able to use these resources. There were years where we would have so much money left over because people just weren't asking for it. They didn't know about it. And so our goal was that we were going to get to $0 and that we would have no money left. And we got to that goal. After we implemented the digital system, our applications increased. The amount just applied by 40% during that year. And we ran out of money, which was really exciting. And that was something that we had never done before. Additionally, we started when we were talking about SAC, we invited people to come join us. And so our commission grew by 5 times its size. It's now currently about 25 people are on the commission, it's the biggest commission in Senate. Not everyone has voting rights, but everyone has speaking rights. And so it's very, very conversational. very relaxed in that sense, and that was definitely something that Charlotte and I worked hard to build that up. You could kind of say that when we joined SAC, it was like in a hole. When Charlotte was commissioner, we had gotten things structured and in order. We had gotten it online, so we got it onto the ground level. And then when I was commissioner, we started fine-tuning things. We started the audit system. We changed the online structure to the budget tool. We made the applications a little bit more competitive, a little bit more detailed, which was valuable because we were getting so many that we needed that information. And so when I was commissioner, we kind of started crawling up a hill of how can we get better from here? And now that Haley is commissioner, we're finally trying to find the peak of the mountain where it's okay, everything is structured well. We have these institutions in place that people know about. Our goal is that SAC stops changing for a while, so to maintain that consistency. But we dug it out of a really deep hole. The Senate is a lot more communicative between the different commissions and between different aspects of Senate. So for a really long time, it was okay, that commission does those things, and this commission does these things, and SAC's over here, and we don't really talk to anyone. And that's just, it was very siloed, and that's just how it was. You were in a commission for a reason. You focused on your areas of interest and your topic. And so I think with last year's Senate and this year's Senate, there's been more of a focus on that cross-communication, that cross-collaboration between different commissions, which can be difficult for sure because you have so many moving parts at that point. The main challenge is actually just that communication. Senate's huge. It's different from any other student organization, mainly because of its size and because of all of the democratic working moving parts to it. So a lot of times you'll be working on an initiative and you're curious if this other person wants to be involved, and they don't email you back, and that's fine because they're busy too. And then something will get brought up and they're like, why didn't you think of that? I'm like, well, I can't think of everything. So that's the biggest thing, is just the trying to keep those structures, those communication structures in place to really have amazing outcomes with bills and resolutions. But it's hard because additionally, a lot of people in Senate are very involved. Outside of Senate, they're all very academically inclined, and so they're not the kind of students that Senate is their whole life. They have 200 other things happening at any given time. So it's difficult for us to find that balance between giving a lot of time, effort, and care to Senate when we need to focus on, graduating and getting jobs and developing ourselves professionally in other ways. And I actually think that is a good thing and a bad thing that our senators don't get paid, because a lot of other senates do get paid. And I think it would make it easier for us because we would have a little bit more income. A lot of people in Senate work other jobs, and that takes away from their time in Senate. But additionally, the people who are here aren't doing it because they want to get paid. They're here because they really love it and because they're passionate about it. So that's a very difficult trade-off. But that's probably the hardest thing, is just maintaining that communication and ensuring that our goals are being met with everyone involved. So my position, mainly the SAC positions, will probably change mostly because they're going to keep getting involved. The amount of student organizations is increasing every year on campus. We have continued to ask for funding increases, and that's something they're going to keep asking for once we get out of this great budget deficit. And so I think just SAC is going to keep getting bigger, and it's going to have more money, and so then you're going to need more very concrete review processes, concrete auditing processes, which are something that we've tried to put into place. But it's always a process, and it's just going to keep growing. So I think the commissioner of SAC is going to continue to obtain more power because of that. And that kind of leads to my advice, is that you should not be in Senate for the power structures and the power dynamic, that you are representing students, and so you have a say in these things. And just kind of that power hungry mentality that you see in a lot of politicians, even that carries over into any kind of elected office. And so when you have $500,000 to fund student organizations, it's a lot of responsibility. And so I think that's just my advice to any student, like future student, is that you're here to help students. You're not here to be, it's not here to be a resume builder. It's not here to, be able to show off and talk about how great you are. That's not the point of this. And you can be proud of the work that you've accomplished, and you can be excited to help students by using the power that you have to benefit them. But you really have to be sure of why you're here and be positive in ensuring that you're here to help students and you're here to make the university a better place, which can be very difficult because there are so many moving parts. You're not just here to represent students with students, you're here to represent students against the administration and very other strange power dynamics that you might not be used to. So just reminding yourself, why are you here? What are your values? Kind of what is your own mission statement, and ensuring that you're following them.